We kick off another week of Steelers coverage here. It's NFL Combine week, and things are heating up on the quarterback market, Steelers Nation, as today we are getting more reporting on Matthew Stafford with a new report today claiming that the Los Angeles Rams are now discussing trade compensation with a few teams if they decide to move on from Matthew Stafford this offseason. We'll break down all the latest Matthew Stafford news on today's edition of Steelers Talk. But before we get into it today, if the Steelers end up making a trade for Matthew Stafford, that's obviously going to be the biggest move of the Steelers offseason. And we're going to be going live for that if a trade goes down. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already for our extensive live coverage of Matthew Stafford to the Steelers or any big move the Steelers make this offseason. So let's start here with what came out this weekend, where Tom Pelissero reported that LA gave Stafford and his representation permission to talk with other teams to discuss potential contract figures to kind of see what his market is out there with other NFL teams. How much money is he able to get if he is traded to another football team this offseason? And then today, Tom Pelissero said on Good Morning Football that Los Angeles is now discussing trade compensation for Stafford with other teams. This is what Pelissero had to say earlier this morning. I am told the Rams also now have engaged with some other teams. There are multiple interested. Trade compensation has been discussed. There's nothing imminent at the moment, but certainly the Rams are getting their ducks in a row to make a decision sooner rather than later. Then Albert Breer also said in his kind of dump this morning that the Steelers are among the interested teams. And the teams that are interested, he listed 4 of them: Pittsburgh Steelers, the New York Giants, the Cleveland Browns, which is a little bit interesting, and then the Las Vegas Raiders, who are obviously also in the market for a quarterback. And it does sound like the Los Angeles Rams want to make a decision on Stafford this week at the NFL Scouting Combine. There's people out there saying that Stafford and his representation are going to be meeting with the Los Angeles Rams in Indianapolis this week, and they are going to be discussing his future, and they're going to try to iron out a deal to keep him in Los Angeles. But if they can't come to an agreement this week, there's people that believe that the Rams will then turn to shopping him to another NFL franchise. ESPN's Dan Graziano has said that there's a quote-unquote pretty good chance that Stafford's situation gets resolved this week in Indianapolis. And Colin Cowherd on his podcast last night says that a source that he trusts says that a decision will be made on Stafford this week at the Combine. So a big question here is, could Stafford be dealt to another team here? I certainly think it's a possibility, but I'll talk about that possibility here in just a second. But first, answer this question for today's pinned comment. Would the Steelers compete for a Super Bowl if they had Matthew Stafford on their football team next season? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by giving me a yes or a no to today's pinned question. So my take on the situation here, guys, is that the Steelers are definitely in a win-now mindset right now. They are not looking to tear things down. They are not looking to rebuild. They are trying to win Super Bowls right now. They think that they are close, and they are trying to get Cam Hayward, T.J. Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, all the players that have been here for a while. They're trying to get those guys a ring before Cam Hayward retires in 2 years. And if the Steelers are serious about that, the Steelers need to absolutely send the blitz for Matthew Stafford and try to get him in a Steelers uniform next year, because he is the only top 10 quarterback in this league that could be made available this offseason, right? If you can't get Stafford, you are left looking at guys like Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, guys that are outside of the top 10 in current NFL rankings among quarterbacks right now. And if the Steelers are seriously looking to try and compete, and they're really going to try and win Super Bowls, and Matthew Stafford's available, they need to do whatever they can to try to make him a Pittsburgh Steeler. But obviously, it's not just about being interested. It's about price as well. Not only trade compensation, but also a new contract that Matthew Stafford and his representation are looking for. So what is it going to cost to bring Matthew Stafford to Pittsburgh, and is that price tag worth it? Well, I do think that it's going to cost at least a first-round pick swap and a second-round pick to land Matthew Stafford, all right? So something along the lines of this, all right? So you swap first-round picks, so the Steelers would go from number 21 to number 26, the Rams vice versa there, and then the Rams would get the Steelers' second-round pick this year. The Steelers could also offer the Rams their second-round pick for next year. The Rams might be looking to draft a quarterback in 2026, so maybe they would rather have the 2026 second-round pick. It kind of depends on what the Rams want there. But I think that this is around the trade compensation that's relatively fair for a 37-year-old Matthew Stafford, who is still a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. But I think that the real question is not necessarily trade compensation. I think the real question is, what does Matthew Stafford want from a financial standpoint, from a contract standpoint? Because obviously the salary cap continues to go up, and he might be wanting to get paid like a legit top 10 quarterback, and he has every right to want that because he is a top 10 quarterback in our league today, in my opinion. And, last year, Stafford did make $36 million in cash from the Los Angeles Rams. So, that is something to keep in mind, that he was willing to pay for $36 million going into his bank account last year. So maybe that's the similar type of dollar figure that he would accept here in Pittsburgh. But honestly, I could see Matthew Stafford wanting to get paid $50+ million, because you take a look at the highest paid quarterbacks in the National Football League right now. I mean, if you pay Matthew Stafford $50 million a year, he barely cracks the top 10, all right? So I think that Stafford's better than a lot of the quarterbacks that are above him on this list right here. So I think that Stafford and his representation might be asking for $50+ million per season. Now, he is 37 years old, so I'm not sure how many teams are actually going to be willing to pay him $50 million per season. But I think among the teams that could, meet that price tag, I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers could potentially be a team that thinks about it. I'm not sure the Rams are one of those teams, all right? Like, I think one of the reasons why the Rams haven't given him an extension yet, and they haven't come to terms, is because I think Stafford and his representation is probably asking for a lot of money, and Los Angeles doesn't necessarily want to spend that kind of money on a 37-year-old Matthew Stafford. But personally, man, especially if the Steelers are serious about this timetable and the clock is ticking on 2 years before Cam Hayward retires in terms of winning a ring, if they got 2 years to win it, I mean, Matthew Stafford, out of the quarterbacks available, you sign him to a 2-year contract. Out of all the quarterbacks available, Stafford gets you closer to that goal than any other quarterback on the market. So if the Steelers are seriously committing to trying and winning Super Bowls over the next 2 seasons, Stafford is the guy they should be pursuing. And, you look at the effective cap space for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. So right now, they have over $50 million, so they can't afford to give Matthew Stafford the contract. But obviously, if you give a $50 million cap hit to Matthew Stafford and you only have $7 million left, you don't have a whole lot to spend on other players. But Pittsburgh can get that up to the effective cap space up to $89.5 million if they make the proper adjustments to their cap this year. If they cut Larry Ogunjobi, if they cut Cole Holcomb, if they restructure guys like Alex Highsmith and Pat Frymouth, if they make the proper moves to open up some more cap space this year, you could get up to $89.5 million. That's almost $90 million in cap space. So even if Matthew Stafford has a $50 million cap hit in 2025 on the Steelers' books, the Steelers still have about $40 million to spend in free agency on other veteran players. And you take a look here at the team needs for the Steelers, you'd be taking care of quarterback because you got Matthew Stafford. Running back, you can easily get in the draft. Defensive tackle, the same. And then you have $40 million to pick up a receiver, probably Cooper Kupp, if we're being honest, if Stafford comes here to Pittsburgh. And then you have, that money to spend on another starting cornerback as well. The Steelers already have their offensive line, their young offensive line that they've already invested in. They have a lot of great defensive pieces already in place as well. Like the Steelers, they can make this work here by going out and getting Matthew Stafford, paying him the contract that he wants, and still having room left over to make this a more complete roster around him. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Would you accept this trade if you were the Pittsburgh Steelers, and would you give Matthew Stafford a big contract to go along with this? Type A for accept or D for decline. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. For me personally, I am accepting this trade, and I am bringing Matthew Stafford to the Steel City. So my prediction here, guys, is I think Stafford and the Rams both want to work with each other. All right, I think that eventually they're going to come to terms here. I think they're going to meet in Indianapolis. They're going to iron out their differences. And I think by the end of the week, we will have some sort of resolution as to Stafford staying in Los Angeles. And then we as Steelers fans and the Steelers organization can move on to other options, all right? And they can start deciding between guys like Aaron Rodgers, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. They can start, debating between those final options. But right now, their focus should absolutely beyond Matthew Stafford. If you can land a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League, you don't have one right now, and you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you should be trying to do whatever you can to get a top 10 quarterback, because this is a quarterback league. If you have a top 10 guy that's not only a top 10 guy, but has also won a Super Bowl and has won a Super Bowl the first year after being traded to a new team, I mean, these kinds of opportunities don't come around very often. So if it's a legit possibility for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think they absolutely need to go out and try and get Matthew Stafford if they can. That'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk, guys. We do have Steelers Talk live later this afternoon, so make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and join us for 3 more segments of Steelers Talk coverage later this afternoon.